Shalom everybody. Today we're going to study something that is very common on Shabbat. People want to know if they can write or erase on Shabbat. And what is considered writing? The whole sentence? A word? One letter? Two letter? Writing with food? So if I'm decorating cake, for example, a birthday cake. What about erasing? What about if I have a plastic bag and I have to rip it in order to get what's inside? But there is wording on it. Let's say said on it the name of the store. Target, Walmart, for example. But when I open it, I'm going to rip it, and now it's kind of like erased. So basically, can I write or erase on Shabbat? What do you think? Write or erase on Shabbat? No. Let's see. Where does this prohibition comes from? All the melachot, all the kind of work that are forbidding on Shabbat, or actions are forbidding on Shabbat, it's called melacha, derived from the work they did in the tabernacle or in the Beit HaMikdash. So what kind of writing they do there? What did they write? So in the Mishkan and tabernacle, they had poles, beams around. And each beam they were writing its place, number and its place. So next time they can put it exactly in its place. They could not remember that. Or sometimes they got it confused, mixed up, so you have to erase and rewrite. So writing and erasing was one of the melachot, the type of actions that is forbidden on Shabbat, because Hashem said on Shabbat, you stay away from these 39 actions. Okay? As an introduction to the melacha of writing, how do you say writing in Hebrew? Can you put the air conditioner on? I think you press on for 10 seconds. In Hebrew, writing called kotev. Kotev. Ani kotev. I'm writing. Okay. The av melacha of kotev is the act, is the act of writing characters on a permanent surface. If someone writes 2 or more letters, he is guilty of capital offense of Shabbat desecration. If he writes only 1 letter, regardless of its size, he is not liable for any punishment. Some poskim rule that writing only 1 letter is not at all prohibited by the Torah, but it is forbidden by our sages. Others rule that it is forbidden by the Torah, although the Torah does not prescribe any punishment for such an act. If writing 1 letter completes an entire book or a message, I'm going to write only 1 letter, but actually the letter that you're writing will complete a sentence or complete a book. So if writing 1 letter completes an entire book or message, the writer is nevertheless guilty of capital offense, since such an act is considered a full act of creating, and therefore it is full-fledged act of melacha. Okay, so it's not only about writing. The letter is, where did you write this letter? Okay, do you feel that it's hard here? It's only me. It's pretty hard, huh? Okay. Now, one is guilty of desecrating Shabbat according to the Torah to only if one uses an ink that is permanent. Okay? Sorry. Okay, that's permanent. And one writes on a material that remains as is indefinitely. Can you get me a tissue box? I feel it's very hard here. I don't know what's up with you. Thank you, appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, that'll be okay. What's up with this pen that it's... I don't know what they can drink. What's up with this pen that it's permanent, no permanent? There is something that called non-permanent pen. Not a permanent marker. Permanent marker you're familiar with. When you mark with it, it stays, right?
Yeah.
The non-permanent marker, it can be erased easily with the fingers, right? Or there are some pens that if you write on a piece of paper or any other surface, it will go away after a few days. It doesn't stay forever. The chemicals breaks and it's going away. It's going to fade a little bit, little by little. So who is using that? So, for example, in the hospitals, when the doctors have to write the prescriptions, or they have to write, a Jewish doctor, and he has to write a report. So if you have to write, it's better to use such pen. So it doesn't stay, it's not permanent. And obviously after Shabbat, they can make a copy of it to make it can stay till less. But at least the action was with something that is not permanent. This is just an example. Okay, if someone writes using a liquid as an ink, that will soon disappear, or if he wrote on a surface that will not retain the writing indefinitely, he has not transgressed a Torah prohibition. Such an act of writing is forbidden only by our sages. Remember, Torah, there are sages, could be both forbidden, but if you break the Torah law, the punishment is greater. One of the issues discussed later in this teachings, is that if using books that have writing imprinted on the edges of the pages, so that when opening the book, one breaks all these letters, and when shutting the book, the letters appears whole, complete, there is a reason to believe that opening the book is an act of erasing, and shouting it in act of writing. I'm sure you have no clue what I'm talking about, right? So imagine to yourself, this is a book that here it says, here, you see here?
Yeah.
It says Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens when I do that? It breaks it. It breaks the letter. So it's considered, on some opinion, that this is erasing on Shabbat. So many years ago, when people printed the books, they made sure not to write anything here. Otherwise, people that wants to follow this opinion will not use the books on Shabbat. Because erasing doesn't mean to take eraser and erase only. It's also to separate words. Okay? We'll get into some examples in a second. So the halacha starts with the basic. If someone writes at least 2 letters on Shabbat, he has committed a capital offense of Shabbat desecration. Having performed the melacha of kotev, it doesn't matter if you're righty or you're lefty, it's forbidden to do this in both hands. Capish? Yes. Someone says, I'm going to take juice or wine, grape juice with my finger, and I want to write here something or draw something on Shabbat. It's not a pen, it's not a marker, it's my finger dipped in grape juice. Can I do that on Shabbat? Okay, so the halacha is, it is forbidden by our sages to wet one's fingertips and then to form letters with the water on the table or other surface. Okay, it happens sometimes that you have text in the house, a book or workbook or whatever, some sort of paper that is ripped. You can read the two pieces. You want to put them together. It could be a small piece. You want to put it together so you can read. Without it, it's a missing, Can I do it on Shabbat? Would that be considered as a kotev, like as if I'm writing? So the halacha says, if a sheet of paper was torn down the middle, splitting many letters in half, it is permissible, it's okay, on Shabbat to place the pieces next to one another. So the torn letters become legible. This is not an act of the melacha of kotev. Doesn't mean it's not writing. It's not kotev. It is absolutely which is absolutely forbidden. Though to tape the pieces of paper together, that would be considered an act of melacha of tofer, sewing. So you say, no, let me take some tape and put it together. Yeah. I'm going to glue this together. No. You can hold them, but not gluing them together. Become solid and permanent. Okay, it'll be considered like tofer. Tofer means sewing on Shabbat. Even if it's not without needle. Okay, in some synagogues, I don't think the case is here, as far as I remember. If you open the ark, okay, I'm going to show it to you behind me. Take the microphone. So, this is the parochet. In some synagogue, you have here wordings that say Shabbat Shalom, Shalom Aleichem, things like that. What happens with you if you open it like that or like that? You break the words.
Yeah.
It's incomplete. Is that considered as erasing on Shabbat?
But in one door you have a...
Who fixed that so beautifully? His name is Moshe Reza.
Yeah.
Right.
Rabbi, what happened if in the one, okay, two doors, okay, but in one door we have the word complete, that is Shabbat, and the other door you have Shalom.
Right. So is that considered erasing? It's also a question, because you're breaking maybe a sentence.
Oh, right, okay.
Okay, so let's see.
Yes.
Yabba Baba, if the doors of the synagogue ark are decorated with verse of the Torah, that could be a pasuk, a verse, that are split in half each time the ark is opened and put together each time it is closed. It is permissible, it's okay to open and close the ark on Shabbat. This is not considered an act of the melacha of writing. It's not considered writing or erasing. Okay. Even if the letters themselves become split into two when the doors are open, it is nevertheless permitted. It would be best, however, if people would refrain from fashioning the synagogue ark in this fashion. Okay, so the carpenter or those people that do making this, you should know there's some opinions of great rabbis that they're against it. So here you see they don't have it. And to make sure that it will be okay according to all opinions. So it doesn't matter if you break a sentence or a word, it's permitted on Shabbat, like in that way. Some people, when they finish to read and they want to go back to the book to read again, they mark it. Some put a sticker that you can use it many times, okay? Some people, during the week, some people like to mark with a fingernail, like that. So Shabbat I can write, so I'm going to scratch it. I'm going to make that scratch, and when I come back, I see the scratch. In some angle, you can see the scratch on the sides of the book.
Okay, only scratch?
Scratch.
Okay.
I do that many times. I do like that. Now I see that I stopped here. If you look here, first glance you won't notice. But if you move it a little bit, you see that there is a scratch.
Yeah.
It's a mark. It's some sort of mark. I'm marking the place on the Sefer or the Siddur or whatever I'm reading. Can I do this on Shabbat? I don't want to forget the place I stopped, right?
Yeah.
I want to make sure I come back to the same spot. Can I do this on Shabbat? So the halacha is, okay, I think I skipped them, I'll get back later. It is permissible on Shabbat to press one's fingernails onto the margin of the page in the book or a sheet or parchment to mark the place. Since such a mark is only temporary, one may mark only a simple slash, however, and not form impression of any letters in any language or any numerals. So if you make line or lines, that's fine. But don't do A, Aleph, Bet, no, there were number 1, 2. It is forbidden, however, to make even a simple mark with the implement that makes a deep and more permanent impression. So even if you do that, do it lightly. It's permissible as well to fold over the corner of the page in a book to mark one's place, and even if it forms a permanent crease in the paper. So you're taking the bed. You know what I'm talking about? Some people, what they do, they fold this part. So they remember to come back to it later.
No.
It's okay to do on Shabbat.
Damage the book.
Damage the book. What if you eat and you have some food left on that? You have to be careful Chametz on Pesach, but because the people are so afraid on the books, they don't even use them. And Chacham Ovadia always says, Rabbi Ovadia always said, don't worry if the book gets dirty, it's because you're studying Torah, and when you come to the next world, you say to Hashem, you see these marks? It's a proof that I study Torah. This is a little bit ketchup, and here's the mustard, and this from the ice cream, and this from the tea, from the coffee. I study Torah, you see? What happens? You buy a new one, no big deal. So don't worry about it. Some says, you know what, I can't write on the table on Shabbat. I can't write on a piece of paper on Shabbat. How about writing in the air? Writing in the air, like that. Aleph, or A. Are you coming with me today? It's writing in the air on Shabbat. Come with me?
But the action to write this to do over something. This is the really action.
Right, here it's in the air.
In the air?
Can you do that? What about writing on the moist on the window? Sometimes it's hot inside, cold outside, and or on the car. People mark on the car. On the snow. Is that considered writing on Shabbat? What about marking on the soil? Take with your finger. So the answer about in the air, it is permissible on Shabbat to describe letter shapes in the air with one's fingers in order to give a silent message to a friend. Likewise, one may make believe one is writing with fingers on the table in view of someone who reads the imaginary letters. So we can do that not only in the air, we can do this on the table even. You can write, yes, no, whatever. This is not an act of writing since there is no mark being made at all. Okay. Okay. You know, how is it called? Did you see the writing in Sefer Torah?
What is the what?
Sefer Torah, in the book, scroll of Torah. Did you see the writing? It's like squarish, right? If you see in my book that I'm reading right now, squarish. Most of books like that. It's called Ktav, writing Ashuri, like Assyrian. It's called Ktav Ashuri. In case that someone have to write on Shabbat or on a holiday. So what do you have to do? You have to write. You have to take notes. For example, he will lose a big amount of money if he won't write it. Okay? I can't think about an example now, but it's a delivery, whatever came, and you have to sign or something like that, some of the sort. So there is a solution for that. There are poskim who rule that writing any characters other than square Hebrew letters on Shabbat is forbidden only by our sages. Therefore, when someone stands to incur hefty loss of money, a lot of money, otherwise he may rely on this opinion, and instruct a non-Jew to write something in another script, such as Latin, Arabic, English character. This is the case of Shavut to Shavut, when it is urgently needed to avoid a loss. It's a very rare situation. Okay. Some people, I wish you won't need to use it, wants to use a thermostat. There's a strip thermostat. There's one you put in the mouth. You can measure the heat of the body. If you're 98, 99, 100 Fahrenheit, okay? Right. Or there's a strip that you put on your forehead, okay? And then it changes letters, or it's going to write something, or it's going to show you all of a sudden high numbers. Mm-hmm. Is that considered as if you're writing on Shabbat? Because you're changing something that was not there. You're highlighting it, okay, with the temperature of your body. Allah says, as explained above, it is permissible on Shabbat to use strip thermostat that, when placed on a person's forehead, eliminates the numeral corresponding to this body temperature and become dark when removed from the skin. This is not considered an act of writing or of erasing. So someone said, okay, I can't erase with it, I'm going to write that. I understand what is writing and erasing, fine. But I have a special shoes, and in the bottom of my shoes, every time I step on something, it's marked. It says either Nike, Adidas, I don't know, it says, whatever. It was a guy that, I forgot his name, I can't remember, that at the very bottom he put the Star of David. It turns out that this guy is anti-Semite. And he put Star of David, so and people buying, you won't notice. If you look from close, you'll see, but if you mark on the floor, it will make sure. So he wants the people to step on Star of David. Just be careful next time. So what do? Can you use it on Shabbat when the brand marks writings on the mud, on the floor? Many brands of shoes have the brand name or the logo engraved in the sole. And when someone wearing them walks or on sand or on snow, the shoes imprint the name onto the ground. You understand the case?
Yeah.
Is it permitted or prohibited? Can you use this kind of shoes on Shabbat? No, nevertheless, you guys in shock. You don't want to say anything, right? Nevertheless, it is permissible to wear these shoes on Shabbat, and this is not forbidden as an act of writing. The person walking has no intention of writing, and although it is inevitable, it's going to happen, if he walks on soft surfaces, this is not a normal way of writing. Furthermore, the letters imprinted in the sand or snow will not last more than a short time. Therefore, it's permitted. Okay. What about a lock? A lock. There's a combination lock. There's numbers. Let's say the numbers now on 1, 2, 3. And my numbers, for example, is 0, 0, 0. So I want to put it back. I'm erasing the 1, I'm bringing 0, 0, 0. I erased the 1, 2, 3, and I wrote, in a way, 0, 0, 0. Now I can open the lock. You understand the case?
Yeah.
Is that okay to do on Shabbat?
I think it's okay.
So Moshe thinks it's okay. And Moshe is right. It is permissible on Shabbat to use a combination lock which has a series of rings that must be positioned so that they display a particular set of numerals in order to be opened. This is not considered an act of writing. Okay. You know, sometimes, when we write something on a piece of paper, like what you're doing now, it's considered writing, right? Because we mark with ink on a piece of paper. We mark something. But sometimes I can mark another impression, not in writing, not necessarily on a piece of paper. Let's say a recording. So I mark with my voice on the recording. So back then, it used to be tape. You remember the tape with strip? Today is more digital. Is that considered writing? I want to record a lecture. Or record, I don't know, any message on Shabbat.
But in this case, it's using the electricity.
Let's say I set it up with a timer from 12 to 1 o'clock. It will work. It will open. Yeah. So the halacha is, if a tape recorder was set up with a timer to record at a certain time on Shabbat, or if it was left running since Shabbat began, it is forbidden to talk into the microphone and have one's voice recorded. Although this is not an act of the melacha of kotev, it's not considered kotev writing, and not the melacha of, and not the act of makeh bepatish. It's not meaning that it's something that you're finishing, concluding a melacha. It is forbidding for other reasons, such as the prohibition against the act of molid. Molid means the act of creating the sound on a tape, creating a new thing. Molid means giving birth, bringing something new to the world. Also, without questions, it is forbidden to use camera to make photographs on Shabbat. For one thing, most cameras are electric, and using one involves electric circuits and a flash of light, an act of the melacha of mav'ir, burn. Some poskim the exposing the film is an act of the melacha of kotev. Okay, it's not filming. Today it doesn't matter. Okay. What about doctors? They have to write reports. Sometimes you have to sign in order to get a delivery on Shabbat. So the delivery man, when he works in the same neighborhood for a long time, you already have experience. So you're Jewish. Yeah, no, don't worry, I'm going to sign for you. I'm just going to write his name. Just going to let it go. He knows you. He's been doing this for years. Sometimes they won't give it to you, and they said there's going to be a second attempt. Okay, to come. So I said, okay, come next time. That's right. But if he signed for you, it's okay. It's on him. It happens to us more than once that we explain to them that we can't sign, and they just let go. Say, that's fine, don't worry about it. And he left it there. If a doctor treats desperately ill people on a regular basis and must write down the patient's statistics and instructions on Shabbat, it is advisable that he use a pen filled with ink that disappears by itself after a couple of days. Remember that I talked to you about at the beginning of the class. Even for a doctor, they say it's an emergency, but it's still Shabbat. Shabbat is the most important day of the week, the whole blessing, the whole kedusha, the whole beracha we get on Shabbat. It says, Ki hi mekor beracha. This is the source of all berachot, Shabbat. We sing it in Lechun Meranana. So don't forget it's Shabbat, Mr. Doctor, and use a pen that can disappear, vanish after a few days. I mean, it's ink. In some hospitals, especially in Bnei Brak and other places, they have this ink, or they have, most likely, a non-Jew, a lot of them on Shabbat, they take the shift. So they're writing, they're taking notes. With that, they already know what to write. The doctor says, let's say, I don't know, Octalgin, 2 times a day, so forth and so on. He's already right, boom, 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 what they're printing out. They do it on their own. Likewise, soldiers and security personnel who must write things on Shabbat for security reasons should use such ink. Ink which is not permanent, because the prohibition is against permanent, because in the tabernacle, the Mishkan, the Beit HaMikdash, they use permanent. Now it's not permanent, it's going to go away. So we treat it differently. The prohibition was against it.
So it's been permitted to a doctor to work on Shabbat?
It's better not to, but many doctors are on call. They have to go to work on Shabbat. Each doctor should consult with his Rabbi. Some doctors are expert than the others. So, because he can save life, so it's permitted for them to work on Shabbat. And a religious doctor, he knows what to do, what not to do, what to avoid on Shabbat. Okay, we have a neighbor right next to my parents' house. He's a doctor and he's a surgeon. Sometimes he's walking. Walking is going to be like 45 minutes. He's going to get to the hospital. Sometimes we see a taxi comes and pick him up. It depends on the urgency. Yeah. If someone comes for, God forbid, a car accident, and he's the expert, they need to be there right away. But if they told them, the nurse called, and they said, listen, we have 2 hours, it's fine. We're preparing him for surgery. So he's walking. Okay? So in order to civilize, a different laws, a different world, different animals. Okay, any questions?
What do you know about the post, the letter? It was wrote or was marked?
Right, it was written.
It was right.
Right. On behalf of Ohev Israel Foundation, I want to thank you, everybody. We probably won't have a class next week with me, but Liran probably will give the class. I'm going B'ezras Hashem to Eretz Israel, coming back on August. Okay? So in the meantime, Liran will take them till he comes to Israel, I think, for 2 weeks. He comes back, coming back actually together. So, B'ezras Hashem, see you on Shabbat, guys? Yes.
I have a question.
Sure.
I can curl my lashes in Shabbat.
Fix it with Shabbat to glue it.
Lashes. Curved.
Yeah. So it's a problem on Shabbat because you might take this out. You might, if you do that, sometimes some pieces coming out. Mm-hmm. It's like you are taking. You can do that definitely before Shabbat. And I think there is some you can use on Shabbat. They are gentle, that you squeeze. And so, if you want to know exactly which can be used on Shabbat, ask my daughter. Thank you, everybody. See you B'ezras Hashem. Tomorrow we have a Zohar class. Wednesday by the Granite.
What time is it?
7:15. It's a class about neshamot, about klipot, about something scary. If you think you can't stand it, please don't come. Shalom.